CNBC TV18 Zetwerk Smart Manufacturing Summit 2024.
CNBC TV18 and Zetwerk recently organized the Smart Manufacturing Summit 2024 in New Delhi. The two-day event brought together business leaders, innovators and policymakers to herald the smart manufacturing revolution in India and recognize manufacturers who are pioneering digital solutions for growth.
Upcoming panel discussion is on the theme of disrupting traditional manufacturing learnings from young leaders. To moderate this session, I'd like to invite on stage Ashwit Kumar, Deputy Editor, CNBC TV18.
Mr. Chaudhary, let me come to you first. We're talking about smart manufacturing. You introduced an entirely different dynamic to the Indian manufacturing space when you came here. Let's begin by giving us some insight as to what this journey took in terms of the challenges that you faced, and also giving us some insight into whether this will lead towards perhaps democratization of manufacturing capacities and capabilities.
What Zetwerk did is we were able to help customers in different geographies. And you know, this whole problem becomes far more complex if you have a customer in a different part of the world trying to find a supplier in India who has machines with a particular settings in a particular place in India who works at a particular price point. It's very difficult for them to discover such supplier. And that was the core problem statement with which we started. And over a period of time, we have helped customers discover suppliers outside of their regular supply base. What has that led? Some of these suppliers have been able to increase their manufacturing utilization far more than what they were, which was essentially a national waste earlier, you know, running a shop at 30-40% utilization.
Let's take this across to the other end of the spectrum. We've looked at what the situation is. Give us a sense, when we talk of new age business leaders like yourself, new age business models, what is the role that both of them are required to play when we talk of adoption of new technology, when we talk of bringing in more efficiencies, bringing in more competitiveness, operating at the scale that you do?
There is a lot of change in these traditional industries. When you see the traditional sector of mining and metals, they have been technology laggards since many years. And now you're looking at us and other companies like us, really looking at those technology interventions that will bring in that entire business model change. When you're looking at how startups are looking at production-grade technologies to make your volume and cost go down. When you're looking at how manufacturing techniques can change, agility can change of these companies, to not just have one plan for 10 years, but to have 10 plans for 1 year. And that, I think, is really changing.
Tell us more about how these emerging technologies will shape the manufacturing journey here in India going forward.
The most interesting thing is what we call emerging has been well established in many countries, right? And it's very exciting to bring a tried and tested technology that India needs here and now. For example, even in aluminium, we have the Jharsuguda plant, which is the largest aluminium smelter, which is having a digital twin. And that essentially means that you can remotely control the entire furnace with predictability of maintenance, of production, and keeping yields up, all through data-driven models and data-driven processes.
Mr. Chaudhary, let me come to you. We're talking about application of AI, development of use cases of AI at a level of, again, large companies. Mr. Heber was referring to that. What about some smaller units? Are there efficiencies to be unlocked using these technologies? Are you interfacing with these new technologies in a way which is looking to benefit some of the smaller players?
Yeah, I mean, very strong use case, right? Manufacturing, whether at a small scale or a large scale, quality is something that the customer desires. And quality is a function of so many things, right? And we have seen strong use cases of quality, be it fabrication, machining, whichever operation it is. Some of it is very preventive kind of actions, which need not require somebody standing there and inspecting the same operation when it can happen through a digital tool. The other area we have seen strong implementation or a lot of excitement around this is safety on the manufacturing shop floor.
This conversation could have stretched the night, but unfortunately, this is all the time that we have. I'd like to thank both of our guests, Mr. Heber, Mr. Chaudhary, for joining us and for sharing these valuable insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, our next panel is Building Factories of the Future. Please welcome Parikshit Luthra to moderate this session.
Mr. Srivastav, let me begin by asking you. Maruti is a car company which has been in India since the 80s. You've seen different eras in Indian manufacturing. Now, when we speak about factories for the future, what does it really mean for for a company like Maruti, which has seen upsides, downsides in the economy, upsides, downsides in the world?
I believe that the new technologies, AI, ML, IoT, these are sort of changing all aspects of automotive manufacturing. I'll give you examples, starting with, and I'll give you rough examples because of paucity of time. Design, for example. Typically, a new model gets introduced from the conception to the final, about 45 to 50 months. But that has now been compressed and is expected to be compressed even further.
You've got Mr. Chandra, who's heading Ducati in India, and I'd like to ask him, when it comes to Italian automobile makers or European automobile makers, they've been known for automobile manufacturing excellence. How do you envision, how are you working at Ducati to make your factories smarter, to make your factories agile for the future?
So what we are doing, for us, it is not only manufacturing, but design part also, which is very, very important for us, wherein we take the use of all the AI and various tools. How a part is going to work at a speed of 300 km per hour is something beyond imagination for most of us. However, my bikes are capable of doing that. In fact, my personal maximum speed is 275 kmph at BIC on a bike, Panigale, yes. And that is nothing, I'll tell you. The maximum speed on a MotoGP bike is about 365 kmph. So for us, it becomes very important to understand through simulation and the uses of technology how a particular part, a component, or the bike in whole is going to actually act. How this is going to work on a racetrack, how the bike is going to work on a off-road kind of thing. So obviously, for us, considering all these things become a package deal. We cannot let it go. So for us, design is something which is 110% married to the manufacturing part.
Amrit, I'd like to bring you in at this stage. When we speak about factories for the future, what are some of the factors that are a starting point for a company like yours?
Yeah, so we've recently started our journey of setting up factories ourselves. But I mean, our thinking is, what is the customer value proposition that you're trying to solve? And hence, you look at what are the technological tools that can solve for that value proposition. So the mistake is not to think, this is the technology and let's find use cases for that. But this is the problem we're trying to solve for, and hence see what are the best available tools, whether it's AI, it's robotics, or what have you. So is your supply chain agile? Is your factory agile? That if the value proposition that you want to deliver is different tomorrow than yesterday, can you react to that quicker than what you would have otherwise taken?
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. It's been an excellent masterclass on factories for the future and Indian manufacturing, and thank you very much for everyone.
Thank you.
CNBC TV18 Zetwerk Smart Manufacturing Summit 2024.
Our very special session on breaking barriers and forging success with women leaders of Industry 4.0. Can we please have on stage Mridu Bhandari, who's the editor for special projects.
Thank you, ladies, for joining us here today. And maybe if I can start with the aerospace and defense sector, and Seema, come to you first. Give us a sense of where we are today as far as women in the workforce are concerned. At Boeing, what does the workforce ratio look like? And what have you all been doing to bring more women back into your workforce?
In Boeing, we have around 24% women. But making sure that they are at every stage, every level of executives, managers, or at the factory floor. And we have been taking multiple, efforts. For example, return to office, making sure that, the women who take a break and they can come back and, work after a break. Making sure that, when they come after a break and we give them, comfort zone, that not a very heavy work just after they come.
Good to hear that. And Naina, if I can bring you into the conversation, what did it take to get to the top? And today, when you look at younger women entering the workforce in the banking financial services space, what is it that they're doing differently or can do differently to follow in your footsteps?
I'm just talking to the panelists today. I take heart from some of the statistics that you all are sharing in terms of the companies and where you have reached in your companies. I was struck by a survey I just seen, which is global, and it tells me what we still need to resolve. And the first is that 70% of men will say they're ready for the change when there is a leadership change happening versus 50% women. So the issue still remains that women do not feel they're ready, even though they are as ready, if not more ready, than the male colleague. So we have to solve for this in our companies, knowing this, in terms of goading them to put their hand up for those changes and compensate for what seems to be an issue across the board.
Absolutely. And talking of culture, I want to come to the culture that Cummins India has. And you've been able to double women's workforce participation over the last decade. How have you created that culture? What have you done differently?
Any culture, I think, gets developed over a time. And there has to be a start of the culture, and the culture always happens top-down. Okay, and it similarly happened for Cummins. 10 years back, we were around maybe 15% women on the shop floor. Today, we are more than 30%. Okay, and I think the most important piece, many of you all know, Cummins is in the heavy manufacturing industries. I think the most important piece which first came to us is how we can make it a gender neutral, workstations. That was the starting point. How we can improve more ergonomics. Okay. The second thing was, how do we bring women and girls to come to work? Because we have facilities which are in remote places, in Fulton, in Jamshedpur, in Devas, more apart from Pune. So they are in remote places. So how do we ensure that the families are ready to allow their girls and their women to come and work? So we really started how we change the culture, bring even the men from their families to come and visit the shop floor to see how they are working. Okay, and how safe they are.
Vaishali, coming to you, the renewable energy sector, again, a sector where there are women, but not enough women yet. So, energy security and women's role in the workforce seem like two very disparate and disconnected topics. But are they really? And what are some of the clear benefits that the renewable energy sector can draw from employing more women in the sector?
In our sector, unfortunately, we employ about 1/3 of the global average in terms of the number of women in this sector. So we have about 11% diversity. The world average is 33%. So India has a long way to go. However, our sector, again, there is a bit of a bias. That is an infra kind of a space. We work in the remotest parts of the country. And so therefore, it's not as easy, it's not as safe for women to work there. Part of it is correct, so that's where organizations like us have to step it up and make the work environment enabling. So, for example, Renew has 2 women-led sites out of many, but it's at least 2. It's a good start. And we are replicating this model. These were pilots. And we are showing, I guess, to our employees and to the sector and the industry that it's possible to have women manage sites remotely. You have to invest, as I said, in infrastructure, in safety, security, and all of that. We have an all-women security force on our sites as well. So these are small ways in which you can make statements about why it is inviting for us.
Suparna, coming to you. Now you're, leading a company, a family business. You're the one that builds the culture. Give us a sense of what the journey has been like over the last 2-3 decades.
I think where the barriers are concerned, I'm going to stand away and say that I haven't faced any barriers. And unlike my father was very supportive, he was from the army, but I think mom really paved the way. She started the business and we went from a business family. Her biggest challenge was how do you raise funds? So I didn't really see any barriers. And it's interesting, my husband actually reports into me. And I think it takes a very secure man, and this is for the men in the audience. I think men have as much a part to play in this journey as women do. With regard to the culture, I think what you really can do, and the only thing you can do is create a safe culture. And all our factories are based out of Haryana. Now, Haryana still is where it is. So I think, how do you take care of the women? How do you make sure that when they're going back, I never worry about the men when they're going back late. I always worry about the women. And I think as the head of the organization, and as you said, I think it is a top-down approach. So, how do you create that culture and just keep it going as you grow? I think that's what organizations can do and must do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible ideas and insights. And I hope you have a good rest of the day. Thanks.
Thank you.
We have our next session on India on the rise, dominating mobile and IT hardware manufacturing. And to moderate this session, may I please invite on stage Ashmit Kumar, Deputy Editor, CNBC TV18, and his panel of industry experts.
Let's first begin with Mr. Ahmed. The PLI has become the buzzword. I think everyone is talking about it. There's so much energy as far as the PLI momentum is concerned. Let me come to you on what went into coming about with this new scheme. What was the thought process? And also importantly, from a forward-looking perspective, what will this transform into? What will it do for the Indian electronics manufacturing space?
Idea which came into fruition was like this. You go into the areas of core competency and cutting-edge technology, bet for size and scale, and also penetrate into the global value chains. So underlying purpose was that achieve the manufacturing efficiency so that you can penetrate into the global market, which can happen only if you have size and scale. Now I can briefly tell sector after sector how it was conceptualized, how it achieved the larger purpose of penetrating into the global value chains. So sector after sector, the idea was to build size and scale, get into the manufacturing efficiencies so that by being efficient in the manufacturing, we can export to the overseas market. Otherwise, you will not be able to protect even our domestic market. So far, if we see more than $10 billion of investment has already been achieved, and over 100 billion of production has already taken place in the country. That is what the success of this PLI scheme has been.
Mr. Folger, let me come to you. From the government to the private sector, you're an accomplished player in this space. Tell us about this pivot that we've seen in the last couple of years, and where is it taking us as we move ahead in this journey?
I think to answer your question, see, India is a full stack player. We start IP, which is being created in very advanced and safety security areas. We have manufacturing today, which is I'll say not yet in terms of numbers, but I think we are starting to see scale with some mega clusters emerging in the southern part of the country and in NCR here. We have components, LMEC components, which Zetwerk itself specializes, and the actives and passives, which Vinod is in. So I think we have a full play, and I think by the end of the decade, I really anticipate with the progressive policies coming from the government in areas like semiconductor and beyond, we will definitely be able to enable this a pivot.
Mr. Sembian, just to give sense as to how these policy levers and these policy messages that are being sent out is being sought to be leveraged to ensure more innovation, more production, more manufacturing.
Yeah. See, PLI as a scheme, as Mr. Ahmed was saying also, right? It has brought in a lot of momentum into the industry in the last few years, what we have seen. I myself used that in my earlier industry and organization, got benefit for the organization also. So that said, is 5-year PLI enough? Those questions keep coming. But that's one of the things even government has been very clear saying, this is a kickstart that's being given to the industry, and whatever the cost disabilities are to be managed with this have to be brought down with appropriate right steps. So on capitalizing on these things, we need to take the right steps in kind of creating the ecosystem. But are we there? Where are we on those elements? That have to be detailed out more, and there could be more support needed also.
Mr. Saxena, let me come to you. The other leg clearly has been Atmanirbharta, making in India. Tell us about your journey in terms of localization and how that strategy is working for you in terms of global competitiveness.
To specific, I come from Aether Energy. It's a wonderful organization. We make electric mobility, electric scooters first in India, in some sense first in the world. To answer specific, like we are proudly announced to various government officials as well as international forums, we are 92% localized. If you exclude the cells, that's a huge localization effort in the last 4 or 5 years. Of course, this is 92, a little bit up and down, mainly because of the commodity fluctuations. But if you go a little bit one step ahead, a little bit deeper localization, we are not there. We are around 65, 62. Of course, we are much ahead of many others. Many others are following us. So that's to answer you. So we have a gap between the tier 1 localization and of course a deeper step tier 2, tier 3 localization, which is around 65, 62%.
Let me in fact take that question across to Mr. Sharma as well. Mr. Sharma, you come from a space that has seen stellar growth the last 36 months. We're talking about the IT, mobile space. Give us a sense, same question in terms of ensuring localization and then using this strategy for greater assimilation with the global value chains.
We've been in electronics manufacturing in India for 40 years. This is our 40th year. Electronics hardware itself is the largest manufacturing industry in the world. At the moment, if you put a figure to it, it's about 2.8 trillion. You divide that by the population of the world, 7 billion. You're looking at a $400 per capita consumption of electronics. And what we mean by electronics is changing as we speak. The choice that India had, and that $400 per capita in India today is $100 per capita only. In the last 5 years, we've come from $50 to $100. I don't think anything should stop us from aspiring to be at least the world average of $400. And that means that our own consumption of electronics is bound to go up by 4 times in 4 years. That's the figure, that's the vision of our own ministry, that's the vision of NITI. So we're saying, hey, you know what? Suddenly we were an importer of phones. Now we are a world-class assembler of phones and to some extent an exporter of phones.
With that, I'd like to thank all of our panelists. It's been a riveting discussion. There's so much excitement in this space, and we hope to continue this conversation and learn more from industry leaders. Thank you once again for being a part of this conversation.
CNBC TV18 Zetwerk Smart Manufacturing Summit 2024.